unfold.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling one of the biggest legends in all of history, the Great Library of Alexandria. You know the one. It's this epic story of incredible genius, unimaginable loss, and a mystery that honestly has been bugging us for something like 2,000 years.
So, we've all heard the story, right? This one single devastating fire just burns the whole place to the ground, taking all the knowledge of the ancient world with it. But what if I told you that simple, tragic story isn't really the truth? Yeah, the real story is so much more complicated, and honestly, way more interesting.
I mean, this is the myth that's taken hold. The idea that just one fire, poof, it robbed us of steam engines, super complex computers, maybe even a full-blown ancient industrial revolution. So today, we're going to dig into the evidence. We're going to find out what really went down at this legendary place.
All right, let's get into it. Here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll bust the myth of that one big fire. Then, we'll look at how the library actually faded away. We're going to peek inside to see what was lost, figure out why their amazing tech didn't spark a revolution, and, this is the cool part, how we're actually bringing its secrets back from the dead.
So, first things first, the myth of the fire. It's a powerful story, isn't it? Super simple. One big fire, and boom, the lights go out on the ancient world. It's a great story for sure, but it's hiding a much, much more interesting reality.
Now let's get to what really happened. It's a totally different picture. The evidence doesn't point to one single event at all. Instead, it tells a story of a long, slow, and pretty brutal decline.
You see, this idea of one big fire is really just, well, it's historical shorthand. It's easy to remember. But the truth is, the library didn't go out in some blaze of glory. No, it was more like it bled out. Over 700 years. It got hit by wars, political drama, new ideas taking over, and just plain old neglect.
Okay, so check this out. That famous fire with Julius Caesar in 48 BCE? It happened, yeah, but it probably just torched some scrolls in a warehouse near the docks, not the main library itself. The real knockout punch likely came way later, in 270 CE, when the Emperor Aurelian's army just flattened the entire royal quarter where the library stood. Then, about 100 years after that, a mob destroyed the daughter library, a sort of annex. And that famous story about the Arab conquest using the scrolls to heat bathhouses? Total fabrication. It was written 600 years after the fact. By then, there wasn't much of a library left to burn.
So the takeaway here is pretty clear. There was no single bad guy. You can't just point the finger at Caesar or anyone else. The library was basically a victim of its time, caught in the crossfire of Roman civil wars, huge imperial campaigns, and really intense religious fights. It was, just as we said, a death by 1,000 cuts.
All right, so now we know how it disappeared. But that leads to an even bigger question. What was actually in there? What did we lose? Let's talk about this incredible engine of knowledge.
The sheer scale of this place it's just mind-boggling. We're talking maybe 500,000 scrolls at its height. Think about that. The kings who built it, the Ptolemies, they had this wildly ambitious goal. They wanted to collect everything, literally, a copy of every single book ever written.
And that's because it wasn't just a library, It was the heart of a bigger thing called the Museon. Think of it like a government-funded research institute, almost like an ancient version of a Google campus. Scholars got paid, they got free room and board, they had botanical gardens, a zoo, observatories, the works. They even had this crazy aggressive policy where they'd board any ship in the harbor, take their books, copy them, and then, get this, give the copy back and keep the original for the library.
So you have 500,000 scrolls. How in the world do you find anything? Well, you invent the world's first search engine. They called it the Pinakes. It was this massive 120-volume catalog that listed everything by author and by subject. It was a total game changer. It turned a giant, messy warehouse of scrolls into a working, searchable database of knowledge.
And the result of losing all this? It's a catastrophe. Seriously, scholars figure we've lost something like 99% of all ancient Greek literature. Just let that sink in. For every single play by a genius like Sophocles that survived, he probably wrote another 15 or 20 that are just gone forever. It's like we're living on a tiny island and a whole literary continent sank beneath the waves.
Which brings us to the craziest question of all, the one that keeps people up at night. Could the ancient world have had an industrial revolution? Did they have the blueprints for our modern world locked away in those scrolls? I mean, some of the stuff they were working on is just wild.
There was this engineer, Heron of Alexandria, who worked at the Museum, and he designed things that feel like they're from the future. Take these automatic temple doors. You'd light a fire on an altar, the heat would expand the air, push water into a bucket, and the weight of the bucket would pull the doors open. Put the fire out, and the whole process reverses and the doors close, all on their own.
And that's not all. Heron also came up with the very first steam turbine, a vending machine that dispensed holy water when you put a coin in, and even an organ powered by the wind. And this wasn't some one-off genius. We found other things, like the Antikythera mechanism, a mind-blowingly complex analog computer for tracking the stars. It proves they knew how to make precision gears 1,500 years before they showed up again in Europe.
So, okay, this is the big question. If they had all of this tech, why didn't they have an industrial revolution? The easy answer is, oh, the blueprints burned in the fire. But the real answer, the more interesting one, is that they had the know-how, but their society just wasn't set up to actually use it.
It really boils down to a few key things. I mean, why would you bother inventing a labor-saving machine when you have an enormous supply of cheap labor from slavery? Plus, the elite, the rich guys, they thought manufacturing and business were, dirty, vulgar. Real status came from owning land and winning wars. On top of that, they didn't have the right kind of steel for high-pressure engines, and they had no access to massive coal deposits to fuel them. So Heron's amazing steam engine, it ended up being a cool magic trick for a temple, not the engine of a revolution. Their world just didn't need it.
Okay, but here's where the story takes an incredible turn. It doesn't actually end with everything being lost forever. Because right now, in the 21st century, we are starting to resurrect the lost library.
This is going to sound like something out of Star Trek, but scientists are taking scrolls that were basically turned into chunks of charcoal by the eruption of Vesuvius, and they're reading what's inside them, without opening them. They're using particle accelerators to create these super detailed 3D scans, and then they use AI to find the patterns of the ancient ink hidden inside the burnt mass.
And it works. Just recently, in 2023, a student became the first person to read a word from inside one of these carbonized scrolls. The word was porphyros, Greek for purple. Now, one word might not sound like much, but it was a massive breakthrough. It proved the concept. It proved we can read things that were thought to be lost forever.
And the discoveries are already starting to roll in. We found a lost book by the genius Archimedes hidden under the text of a medieval player book, where he's clearly using a form of calculus like 1,800 years before Newton. We found bits of a lost star catalog from an astronomer named Hipparchus that show his measurements were way more accurate than anyone ever thought. We are quite literally reading the ashes and ghosts of the past.
So you see, the story of the Library of Alexandria isn't just a tragedy about loss anymore. It's turning into this amazing story of recovery, a story about what we are, finally, after 2,000 years, finding again. And that leaves us with this incredible, mind-bending question. What other forgotten ideas are hiding in there, just waiting to be read? And how might they rewrite not just our past, but maybe even our future?